We all know that real estate has created more millionaires than any other industry on the planet. We also know that it has created a lot of heartache due to mismanagement, overborrowing, and just simple life events that happen to all of us. Welcome to the Cash Flow Pro podcast. My name is Casey Brown, and I am your fearless leader. And although we might be bourbon sipping and at times foul-mouthed Southerners, we will always do our best to be honest, straightforward, and due diligent with all of the information we pass along to you. Welcome to the show. Hey there, and welcome to today's episode of Cash Flow Pro, your daily real estate investing podcast and YouTube channel. I am here today with Megan Greathouse of Greathouses LLC and Horizon Sign Company. I know I'm reading that because I wanted to make sure I had all of that stuff correct, because you are going to get a story today. Like many of our guests, she decided one day that she was going to just give that 9 to 5 the boot. And these two great companies were born out of it. And she is a seasoned investor and also running a sign company on the side. So Megan, how are you today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Oh, great. We're wonderful. We're blessed. We're very glad to be here. And I'm glad to have you on here to share your story.
Thank you so
So
much.
let's jump right into it. Let's chat real quick. I know we were talking pre-show about some, I think basically your entire pre-real estate life revolved in, around, or on top of military life of some kind. So tell us a little bit about all of that, and then eventually what led you down the path of saying, hey, this 9 to 5's got to go.
Sure. So like you said, much of my life, all the way into and through part of adulthood, revolved around the military. I was born to a military family. My dad was a career Marine. I bounced around every 2 to 3 years. We were talking about how it's funny that I own a bunch of real estate now because we didn't own any houses when I was growing up because we moved every 2 to 3 years. We were living on base housing or renting nearby. And then I, graduated high school right as my dad was retiring from the Marine Corps. Decided to go to college, and halfway through college thought, I don't know, like this is a big culture shock, leaving the military lifestyle. And it was kind of cool, the things they did. So I think I wanted to do that too. So I joined the officer candidate program. I'd go to the trainings in the summer. And then after I graduated college, I was commissioned as an officer in the Marine Corps as well.
Oh,
so, I did the whole officer in the Marine Corps thing for 4 years active duty. My husband actually was also a Marine officer. We knew each other in college and then kind of ran into each other again while we were active duty.
So he went the same path and you all met back up after?
Yeah, we were both at the same college. We knew each other through friends because we were both in the officer candidate program. And then we kind of bumped into each other while we were active duty. So it was funny how that happened. We ended up getting married while we were active duty and came back to St. Louis together. It's where he was born and raised and where my dad's from. So that's why I came to school in St. Louis. And
I hope you're Cardinals fans, right?
We are, yeah. Oh, of course.
Yep,
Cardinals and Blues.
That's right.
But yeah, so after that, we then built on that career in the military because we had these great GI Bill benefits, and we used that to go back to school and get our MBAs, which is what kind of thrust us into the corporate world. And I worked at a major food company, a pet food company here in St. Louis. And anyone who's from St. Louis or knows it will know exactly what I'm talking about. And my husband for a giant alcoholic beverage company. Awesome. And we were having fun for a couple of years there, these nice cushy salaries and everything. And then we had a baby. And that just, anyone who has kids also knows how that just changes everything. And I didn't think, I knew I would be excited about having a child. I was really looking forward to it. I knew I would love this baby so much, but I had no idea how much it would change my perspective on how I wanted to spend my time and what I was willing to do for my long-term career. And even though I really, really loved what I was doing marketing and brand management for this big company, I did not love the lack of flexibility. I didn't feel like I had say over my own time. Anytime my kid got sick, I felt guilty that I had to call in and say, sorry, I've got to stay home today. And we were at a very family friendly company. So I can only imagine what it's like for people who work for companies that aren't that way. I was at
Yeah.
one that was very family friendly, and I still had this guilt and this kind of, it was just rough trying to balance it all and feel good about it. And I don't think the balance necessarily gets easier. Being an
Yeah.
entrepreneur with young kids is also very difficult and takes a lot. But I just feel so much more in control of my own time. So it was in 2017 when my daughter was about a year old that I bought my first small multifamily, residential rental property. Kept kind of
Okay.
rolling from there. And by 2019, I was leaving my full time job to focus on that and my kids.
Awesome, man. That's a great story, and I
Mhm.
tell you, I can't even begin to. I think there's got to be a correlation between the military ownership and real estate investing, because I can't tell you how many either active or past duty officer, well, I say officers, military folks that I've had on my podcast who use that GI Bill to really kind of give them that springboard of saying, hey, we're going to loan you this, of being able to either get that 100% loan to start with and then build some equity that way, or at least just somebody being willing to say, hey, we'll loan you the money,
Mhm.
no matter if it was whatever percentage it was. But so, and then I think that there's a correlation between that and the systems that are involved post, like people go back and they're like, because military officers, I know, and again, we live right down the road from Fort Campbell, so I've had tons of experience with them, and everything's boom. They operate a lot the way I operate, and that's kind of like I think why we get along so good. But when you systemize that stuff, and then coupled with the ability to start by having the ability to borrow money to start, I
Mhm.
guess is what I'm trying to say. So all of that coupled together, and then the systems and everything, it just kind of seems like it takes off. So 20 this okay. So let me step back. So the 2019, you gave the W-2 the boot and
Mhm.
said, "Hey, I'm going full time real estate."
Mhm.
Now let's talk. Did you live in the first house that you all bought and then rented it? How did all of this come about where you first were like, "Hey, I'm going into the real estate space"? I mean, was it a rental? Was it a commercial property? What was the beginnings of all of that?
Yeah, great question. So, funny thing is, I give this little short bio, but of course, there's a lot of bouncing around in there.
Oh
So
yeah,
when I first graduated from college, my dad gave me a few books because he was basically like, Megan, don't screw things up. You've got some college loans and all
sure.
these different things going on. Make sure you pay attention to your finances and how you're planning for your life. So he gave me a few different personal finance books, one of which was Rich Dad Poor Dad.
I knew you were going to say
Yep,
that.
yep. Along with Total Money Makeover and Millionaire Next
Yep.
Door. So, a good
Yeah.
variety, but all kind of very basic foundational type of books. And Rich Dad Poor
Yep.
Dad, of course, planted the seed of real estate. So even when we were young, we were just newly married. I remember being in Afghanistan and reading some of these books too. And my husband and I would message back and forth about like, well, what will we do? And should we get into real estate? That's interesting. And our thoughts on that. But it took us years to actually get into it. The,
Yeah.
the first thing we actually did was we used the VA loan. So the
Okay.
0% down payment loan to buy a house of our own right after we got out of the military. So when we were active duty, we didn't buy anything. But right when we finished and we moved back to St. Louis, we used the VA loan for 0% down. And I think we still actually put a little bit of money down because there was something weird in my like Dave Ramsey part of my brain that was anxious about the
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
0% down loan.
Yeah.
But we bought in 2012, which was a pretty good time to buy. It
Sure.
wasn't so tumultuous anymore, but it wasn't
Yep.
like anything had skyrocketed again yet. So when we were ready to buy our second home, because we had gotten these corporate jobs after our MBAs and we knew where those were, they were all the way downtown, which is kind of far from where we purchased. We decided to buy something closer in, and we kept that first house as a rental property.
Yep.
And because we're
Okay.
both military, it was very easy for my husband used his VA loan on the first house. I used my VA loan on the second house, which is where we currently are now 6 years later. So we had almost no money down between these two homes.
Sure.
And
Sure.
we were able to kind of dip our toe in the water of owning residential real estate. And everything that I've purchased has just been residential, small multifamily residential rentals. So our first test was just that single family home, and it didn't even cash flow that well. I barely knew how to run numbers at that point. We just knew that
Yep.
the rent was higher than the PITI, the principal, interest, taxes, insurance. So we were like, that's good,
Yep.
right? No, like by the time you took everything else out, it was,
Yep.
I mean, I think it was less than $100 per month on this, like, $250,000 house. But
Yep.
it let us peek into it and get like your feet wet, actually understand by doing
Pretty good foundational
experience.
deal.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's a pretty good foundational deal just to be able to dip your toe in there, and
Right.
you're not losing money
No. And
necessarily, but you're not.
actually, I think we made way more money on that house by holding it those extra 2 years while we were renting it out, because, the market just kind of kept going up,
Yeah.
up, up, still pretty slowly but surely at that point. But I mean, by the time we sold that thing, we had a good chunk of cash that came back to us from it
Yep.
that we then were able to put into more multifamily buildings.
Awesome. And that was, you bought that in 12 and sold in what year?
We sold in 2015. No.
Okay.
Is that right?
And then
No, that wouldn't be right. 2017, I think it was.
2017.
Yeah.
Okay. So you
So,
had it
yeah, we
for five
kept it
years.
for 5 years. We lived there
Mm,
for just over 2 years of the 5 years. So it was also
So
tax-free gains.
I want to jump. I want to
Yeah.
dig real quick into that, just because so many people miss that. And I guess anybody that's been in any type of real estate business or have an accountant that's worth two nickels can they'll tell you that 2 of the last 5 years. Now, military, I learned not long ago. Don't you have a little bit longer period too of?
I would not
Don't you have a little bit longer period than 5 years?
I wouldn't be surprised, because we never owned while we were active duty, and I would bet that's something that would apply
Now, maybe it
primarily to
was.
active
I have
duty.
to. Yep.
Um, because I'm sure it has to do something with, I mean, even like leases, military, there's always a way for active duty
Oh,
military personnel to get out of leases early
yep.
if they have orders showing that
Yep.
unexpectedly they're
We
being
deal with that
moved.
a
So
lot
yeah.
around here, especially with, with our, yeah, we do a lot with that around here. And I'll tell you, so you all were kind of in the game post '07, '08, '09, the era that we all, um,
Yep.
like everything in my life is pre '07, post '07, or pre '08, post
Right.
'08, I guess. And so when you all were finally on some solid ground and you sold that house in 2017, how much cash over and above what you owed on it did you make? Like, of course you were paying it down, so
Mm-hmm.
obviously you're not making cash flow necessarily, but you're making equity, you're building equity with every payment that goes in. So how much cash did you all make on that deal?
Yeah, I wish I had looked at the numbers before this.
Oh,
We
it's fine. Just
either got our check back after closing, and we put probably 15 to 20 right before we sold it in sprucing it up, like
Mhm.
completely fresh paint throughout, new carpeting, a
Sure.
couple touch-ups here and there, just because it had been, renters with dogs had been in there for a couple of years.
Ooh,
So we spent a
okay.
little, it wasn't bad, but we spent some money, made sure that it would show well and sell quickly. And I wanted, either our check was 70 and we had put 15 to 20 in, or our check was 90 and 70 was the net. But I
Okay,
can't
I
remember
got you.
which. But it was, I mean, it was a
Yep.
good chunk that went to, one or two more
Certainly.
rental properties pretty quickly.
If you look at it, from the standpoint of, let's just say it was 70,000, that's gives you the ability basically to borrow 350. Well, that gives you the ability to borrow 280,000 plus that 70,000. So, at a 20% down, unless you were working with a bank. So yeah, I mean, it basically it kind of let that house have babies, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
of other properties that now that now do cash flow because they were either bought differently or underwritten differently or whatever the case is.
Yep.
So tell us, what is the business like today? What is Great Houses, your company? What is Great Houses like? How many doors does it have? What is the current status?
Yeah. So Great Houses is kind of, I mean, it's small but mighty. I've been just buying a couple things per year for several years
Sure.
now. We've got 26 units
Oh
across
wow.
different areas of if you know St. Louis South City and Mid County
Yep.
St. Louis, which are all kind of really solid rental areas, attract a good variety of tenants, but good quality tenants is always something I'm focused on because I self-manage with an assistant. So I keep management in-house, and my plan going forward is to continue to build the in-house management rather than outsource. So I'm
Okay.
always thinking about quality of tenant. We own 14 of those doors ourselves, and then
Okay.
the other 12 with one partner per building.
Okay.
So we have started taking on some money partners from just the circles that I've worked with and been involved with. I do a lot of networking in the area. I have a couple real estate networking meetups that I run with a friend or two each here in St. Louis, and those have been really, really awesome just to build relationships with people. Depending on when you start real estate. When I started it, I was still working that 9 to 5. And I bought my first 4 family, and I was so excited. And I talked to my husband a little bit about it, but he was more like there to sign the documents. He wasn't really super involved with it. And I didn't know anyone else who was doing real estate. And I'm a social person. I'm very extroverted. And so I was like, well, who can I talk to about this? So I started getting people together from online forums to come together in person and network and talk about real estate. And that's taken us far. And that's how we've met some of our now good friends and money partners on some of these deals.
Awesome. That's great. So you have 12 units with one money partner and 14 that you all are on all by yourself. And then now how many is it some quadplexes and some triplexes, or are they all, or majority of them single family? What was that breakdown?
It's all 4s and 2s.
All 4s and 2s.
Yep.
Okay. Awesome.
Yep.
Yep.
And we
Keep them even.
yeah, and kind of a funny something that I like to look at that gives me excitement for the years to come is we, from 2017 through the first half of 2021, I got 10 units accumulated. And there are a couple of other things in there. I did a couple flips and such, but 10 units in those years. And then from July of last year to present, I've purchased 16 units. So
wow.
I'm very excited about kind of the trajectory now as we've got our feet under us. One of the funny things about it is when we became quote unquote unbankable, because my husband also left his job and we started a new company together, was when my work with real estate took off a little more, because I was forced to go commercial and learn commercial lending and build some I guess networking with the banks, with the smaller local banks.
Step back. Hi, this is Casey Brown, host of the Cash Flow Pro podcast and YouTube channel. Have you been thinking about investing in real estate but just don't know where to begin? I'd like to help by inviting you to check out our website at www.3000capital.com. There you will find an array of material that will help you learn all about real estate syndication. And while you're there, be sure to check out our free video series download titled 5 Must-Know Keys to Success in Passive Real Estate Investing. I'd also like to personally thank you for making Cash Flow Pro part of your day. Now, back to the show. The step back to the term unbankable. I know what it is, but I'd like for you to explain it to the listeners.
So we are, just so folks know out there, the quote unquote term unbankable, a lot of folks in real estate will use that when they are at a point where they're not able to get conventional loans. So we, by all means, are able to get commercial loans. And in fact, in many ways, it feels easier than it used to feel getting conventional loans. But we no longer fit the box that Fannie and Freddie put for lenders who are doing conventional loans and might resell it on the secondary market. So and correct me if I'm saying any of that incorrectly, but basically we don't have the 9 to 5, the W-2, or 2 years of tax returns showing that our business is giving us so much money every year.
That's the biggie that people run into, is that 2 years tax returns. I can't tell you how many times I've had people show up on my proverbial doorstep ready to buy a house, making good money, just started a lawn mowing business or just started a whatever business 6 months ago. And they're like, man, this thing, I'm making more money and I know what to do with it. I'm ready to buy a house. And you always set them down. And if they haven't had, now it's not that they can't buy a house, but you can't use that income that you're currently making, or even if you've had one tax return with that income, you can't use that income. That income has to be excluded. Then you have to use what's left to see what you qualify for.
Right.
So yeah, the 2 years tax returns is that's the biggest probably hang up. Um, Aside of everything else you mentioned, I mean, everything else now all of a sudden, when you call, like, my wife and I got a conventional mortgage on our house that we live in now,
Mhm.
and I mean, it wasn't that we were necessarily unlendable or unbankable, but it was a considerably longer process because it was just like once you're self-employed, it's you take on a whole nother, I guess, risk level, honestly,
Mhm.
for the lender, because that lender now has to say, okay, what happens if like, for instance, if you're a real estate person, what happens if the market goes down? Okay, then the guy doesn't have the money to make the payment that he's using this income now. So
Mhm.
you take on a whole nother risk level. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, some lenders or some underwriters, I guess, require that they stretch that average across a certain period of time. Sometimes they shorten that, sometimes they lengthen it, depending on, I think, on how the economy is performing. But when you go to borrow that money, you have to meet basically a whole nother level of criteria.
Mhm.
But like you said, with the benefit to that is, if you're banking at small town or even medium sized bank in town that's a local branch for your state or whatever, or a local bank for your state or whatever, you tend to take on another level with them, where if you needed $250,000, basically the only thing it's contingent upon is them getting an appraisal on that property. And you call them up, say, hey, I just bought this. I've got 40, I've got, 50 down. I got my 20% down. We're going to buy this. Can you go ahead and get things started? Then at that point, a lot of times, at least my bankers will say, can you send me an updated financial, or, just something quick. You don't have to go through the full formalities. So anyway, I didn't mean I always get talking off like things like that. But I do appreciate you digging into that, because I think there's a lot of folks out there that need to understand how these commercial loans get started and what you have to do. And a lot of times it requires people to work two jobs. I mean, people, if you ever want to count that lawn mowing income, or if you ever want to count that whatever income that you have additional, you have to work your regular job as well as that additional income if you need both.
Mhm.
If that makes sense. So
Yeah, at
go
least
ahead.
so you get through that 2 years and you can show a track record. But I do think that when you're buying for investment, commercial is there are some downsides. Of course, you've got some different terms. There's going to be refinances along the way. You don't just get 30-year fixed rate forever.
That's
That
right.
just locks you in until it's paid off, which is very nice for conventional. But on the commercial side, once you build those relationships and you can show a track record, it is, like you were saying, it's easier. So the commercial banker that we've worked with has, our personal financial statement, which I update, roughly quarterly with him. He's got my current rent roll of all the units and who's in there and how long their leases are and what they're paying. He
Yep.
knows my, big picture income and expenses for the business. And when I come to him with something new and I show him my pro forma on how I think it's going to perform, he is
Yep.
underwriting based on the deal, not based on my W-2 income. So that's a
Yep.
big difference between conventional and commercial. Is the commercial lending is based on, they want to see that you have experience and a track record and some level of financial stability, some sort of net worth that shows that you're building wealth and it's going in the right direction. But a lot of them deciding yes or no on a loan is based on the deal itself. And yes, we see the
That's right.
cash flow and the business proposition behind this real estate that you have under contract. So we're going to give you the money.
And your ability to operate said real estate. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, once you've proven that you have the ability to evict a tenant that is not paying and is troublesome and worrisome and bothersome, and once you've proven that you can accommodate that, what it takes to do that, because I'm not going to lie, I mean, sometimes evictions are tough. I mean, they're tough mentally, um and I've always, part of my, I guess, if I were to say my weakest point, is when kids are involved.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I've always had a problem with, the parents live this lifestyle of we'll band-aid it all together and keep it going and whatever. And then it comes down to, it's December 1st and you're headed into the holiday season. They haven't paid rent in 3 months. And now all of a sudden you're stuck with a moral obligation to humanity, basically, of saying, hey, do I put these kids out at Christmas time and get my business back in line? Or B, do I just say, hey, this is me paying it for, whatever the case is.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, once you've proven that you can do that, and that's big to a bank, is saying, hey, I've done this, I can do this, this is my track record. Because honestly, the officers have to sell it up the line as you gain, as that snowball gets bigger and you become more of a liability to that bank in terms of what assets you have borrowed from them. They have to send it up the line. You don't just deal with one little loan officer, as then you have to get the opinions. And then a bank that I used to bank at had where the board had to sign off once you got to a, so like 5 million or something like
Mm-hmm.
that, and then the board had to sign off on anything additional. And so anyway, now, real quick, let's talk a little bit. So you all, so 26 doors. I want to jump over the to another lily pad here and discuss the sign business, because not that the sign business necessarily has a lot to do with real estate, which is what we talk about a lot on this podcast. But the reason why I want to jump over there is because pre-show you and I spoke a little bit about an SBA deal, and then how that kind of fits into this whole stack of Legos, I guess, if you will.
Yeah.
And how does that what does that do for you all in the commercial business?
Yeah. So the sign company was kind of our answer to a couple things. It was our answer to getting my husband out of his 9 to 5 as well. It was our answer to just an itch to continue the entrepreneurship route. I do think that actually, oftentimes, real estate and small business ownership go hand in hand, because if
Yep.
you're going to syndicate, you're running a business based around real estate. If you are going to
Yep.
start a property management company because you have become a broker and you want to take on that arm of real estate as well, it's a business. So there's a lot. And actually, one of the reasons we chose a sign company is because it's very related to commercial real estate. So we're a commercial sign company. We don't do birthday banners and stuff. We do
Sure.
large lit up channel letters on the sides of retail locations, and all of the signage inside and out of an assisted living facility, for instance.
Yeah.
So, we liked that it was related to the real estate that I had already started for us. And it was something we could work on and build together, and that my husband could really devote himself to as he stepped away from the 9 to 5.
Yeah.
But something that you mentioned was, so we were starting this in 2020 because apparently we are crazy. And
Y'all didn't think when you got to the SBA office and it was a ghost town, except there was one guy there saying, "Hey, we'll make loans. We're going to start a business in 2020," while everybody else
yep.
is locked in their house.
Yep. Yeah. Well, and that was one of the things, is we were concerned about the process of getting a loan.
Yeah.
A lot of folks talked about SBA loans, and the SBA was, I believe it was the SBA who was running all those PPP loans at the time.
Yep.
And they were just
Yep.
inundated with things. And we were concerned. And we also thought, well, wouldn't it be nice to start a business without debt? And this is where just having the investor mindset, big picture, not necessarily even real estate specific, is helpful. We've always been good
Yep.
about putting money away in our Roth IRAs and 401ks and all these different places. Like I mentioned, I like diversification. So we had the traditional funds set aside. And what we ended up doing instead of a traditional SBA loan was we did a ROBS. So it's rollover for business startup. We used my 401k from my corporate job and my husband's TSP. And then also some cash we had set aside. And
TSP.
I'm sorry, it's basically like a 401k for service members. So when you're active
Okay.
duty, you can invest. And I think there might be some like civil servant type roles where you can also
Okay.
have a TSP, but it stands for Thrift Savings Plan. So
Okay.
it's very much military. You can have it when you're in the military. And for some reason, I don't know what I was doing. I did not start one when I was in the Marine Corps. My husband did. He had one. So we rolled those things over. And basically what happens is instead of those things being invested in, the S&P index or whatever, the S&P 500 index or whatever it is, they're now invested in Horizon Sign Company. They have shares of stock in the Horizon Sign Company Corporation, as do my husband and I, because we put in cash as well.
Okay.
And this allowed us to start the company without a loan.
Okay.
It was our own money, but it was retirement funds. So there's a lot of rules about what you can and can't do. For instance, I could not go buy a warehouse space under Great Houses LLC and rent it to Horizon
And
Sign
rented too.
Company.
Yep.
So there are things about it that are downsides. In my mind, at least, there are some things I would like to do in the future that would involve buying out the 401k so we can do it. But it's a great way to get started if you already have some funds in place and for one reason or another you don't want to or are not able to go the loan route, the SBA loan route.
Sure. And I like that topic for a lot of reasons because it really brings back, like, it almost gives definition, or at least a look to some different capital stacks, as far as, like you said, the 401k and the TSP owned shares in Horizon Sign Company. And so again, it really just gives some definition to what's going on with these different capital stacks and who owns what. And again, like when you start looking at LLPs or LLCs, and then you start looking at shares, because a lot of people don't necessarily they don't necessarily put, like, they when you think of like shares of stock, they think of shares of whatever big company there is on the New York Stock Exchange, or like you said, index funds or whatever. And so, but what they don't realize is that these LLCs and LLPs and LP, all of that stuff has the same. It's the same basic model. It's the same basic. Hey, I'll sell you 25% of my LLC for X figure, brings in funding, then you go from there. It's just a private placement.
Mm-hmm.
It's a private deal that is not necessarily going to be regulated. I mean, there obviously is going to be some regulations, financial stuff that you have to make sure meet, has to meet certain criteria. But what I'm getting at is it's private placement stuff. So basically, you and your husband and your 401ks are business partners,
Correct.
and that's the point that I wanted to get to with this discussion, was just so people could possibly see the capital stack there, dissected, so that, because it's the same deal, and just like a syndication, or
Mm-hmm.
just like an investment group, or whatever, whatever the case is. So,
Mm-hmm.
well, listen, we're running up here on the end of our time, and first of all, I want to thank you for a few different things. I want to thank you for taking the time out to come and be with us today. I know it's always super sacrificial for people to give up that time. That, just like you said, you went into business for yourself for the time. But I want to thank you for your time being here. I also want to thank you and your husband both for your service and what you've done to help further our great country. And I want to thank you for that. Now, a couple of questions, and these are ones that you probably may or may not be expecting. It depends on how many episodes you've listened to. What is, without, and I've got to start prefacing this question with that, without saying Rich Dad Poor Dad, what is the best book that you have recently read?
Ooh, I am, well, hopefully it still counts that I'm in the middle of it, but I'm reading Traction, which has been an
Okay.
amazing book for getting your business organized and showing clear vision and strategy, and then making sure you're putting processes and systems in place for that.
Awesome. Yeah, and it's I mean, it's spot on, and on all fronts there. I mean, because this is a systemized business, and like you said, like we said earlier, the systemized everything that's systemized, everything that's in place, do the same things every day, big things happen.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, where is a place that you have either recently traveled to, or hope to travel to soon, like a dream vacation or dream trip?
Ooh, I love this question. As you can see, I have a map behind me. We put our little pins in. I love travel.
I love it.
Huge fan. So it's a very hard question for me, though. I feel like it's asking
I
what my
understand.
favorite child, which is my favorite child. But I am, next year, we're hoping to do Croatia. And that's been a
Awesome.
big one on my list for a very long time. My mom's family came from Croatia, and but I've never been, and I've heard it's just beautiful. So I'm hoping to
Sure.
go there next year.
Sure. My wife and I are the same. We love to travel and love I'm a cultural junkie. Like, I love culture. I
Hmm.
don't anything about going to a beach, or I mean, obviously, don't get me wrong, I love a beach, but I just love culture. I love seeing where and what other people do with their free time and eat their food and so on and so forth. So anyway,
Agreed.
wonderful.
Agreed.
But all right, well, listen, Megan, I want to thank you again, and please give our best to your husband and thank him for his service as well. We do appreciate everything. And again, thank you so much for your time, and I hope everybody has a wonderful rest of the day. Thanks for listening. Cashflow Pro is hosted by Casey Brown, founder and CEO of 3000 Capital, a commercial real estate investment firm committed to providing its investors with ongoing cash flow and helping them build long-term wealth. If you enjoyed today's podcast, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you'll be notified about all our future episodes. You can find more information about us and our investment philosophy by clicking the link in the show notes below. Thanks for listening.